our speaker went to junior high with a friend of mine, and she said that he used to talk about how he wanted to be governor. And she would say, "Oh, Billy Clinton." Well, you see what happens when you hold on to your dreams? As president, he led our nation to a period of strong economic prosperity. There may be a lot of that. While Bill Clinton was president, the nation enjoyed the lowest unemployment rates in recent times, the lowest inflation rate in decades, the highest home ownership rates in its history, and improving economic equality. His foreign policy achievements included presiding over the 1993 signing of the Oslo Accords between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, establishing peace in Northern Ireland, stabilizing war-torn Bosnia through the Dayton Peace Accords, and helping end Serbia's ethnic cleansing of Albanians in Kosovo. He left office with a 66% approval rating. I think if we took the numbers in this crowd, he'd do better, don't you? Now, a lesser man might have basked in the glow of his glory days, but in the 12 years since he left office, he's established and been an active leader in the Clinton Foundation. The foundation combats climate change, provides treatment of HIV, AIDS, and malaria, addresses childhood obesity, creates sustainable development in Africa, and promotes economic opportunity through encouraging entrepreneurship in challenged communities. Perhaps the most powerful organizations he's built are the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Global Initiative University, which convene to inspire thousands of people to join him in fighting for a better world for your generation. His work on behalf of the poorest and most desperate in Haiti is well known. In the aftermath of the Asian tsunami, he was on the scene right away and back 2 years later, advocating for more and faster rebuilding. For 8 years, he held the most powerful position in the world. But you know that I believe that leadership is not about the position you hold. Bill Clinton is a leader because he has continued to make a difference. His accomplishments in the White House made him a successful president. His work since has made him a great human being. I'm proud to introduce a person that I've called my friend for almost 40 years, the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, thank you for the wonderful welcome. It's great to be back in South Carolina and in this city where I gave my very first speech. The first speech I ever gave in Columbia was at the request of the then Governor Dick Riley on September the 23rd, 1979. I'm getting old. And I still have a little silver box commemorating it, which I have in my apartment above the library in Arkansas. I thank President Whitson. It has a nice ring to it. I'm glad, unlike me, she wasn't limited to 8 years, too. I'm glad you had her for a dozen years, and I'm proud of what she's done here. I congratulate the students and their families who are here, and I thank all their families, their friends, the faculty, the staff, everybody that helped all of you to get to this day. This is a day which is about you and your future. So I will try not to reminisce too much about the past. And I am also well aware that for most people, the least important part of a college commencement is the speaker. I graduated from college 44 years ago, and I'll bet you anything in 44 years, hardly anybody will remember anything I had to say. I, however, remember the entire commencement address of the man who gave my college commencement. At Georgetown University, on June the 8th, 1968, we're sitting on the lawn. The mayor of Washington, D.C., Walter Washington, was introduced to give our speech. He stands up, a huge storm cloud comes over. And at the first loud clap of thunder, the mayor looked at us and said, "If we don't get out of here right now, we're all going to drown." If you want a copy of my prepared remarks, you write me and I'll send them to you. Good luck. I'd give anything if you could remember my talk that well. The only personal advice I have is what you've already been given. Thomas Jefferson, when he was helping to pen our founding documents, said that we are all endowed with our Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not with the right to happiness, the right to pursue it. Turns out the joy is in the pursuit. And the real personal value of a university diploma is that it gives you more choices and more power to follow your heart as well as your mind. It's been my experience in life that most people are happiest doing what they're best at. But the important thing is to do what you wish most deeply to do, because then it doesn't feel like work. People tell me all the time I'm working too hard, and I say I don't work an hour a day because I like what I'm doing. And I think it's really important to recognize that in most of human history, if you go back to the rise of the first human beings on the East African savannah, something like 150 or 170,000 years ago, throughout all of human history, most people had utterly no choice about what they did to survive from one day to the next. They had to do whatever it took to get enough food and to establish some sort of family bonds and to have children so that the human race would go on, and then to try to make sure they survived. And the great thing about all this material progress, even in spite of the terrible economic times our country's going through, is that people have more choices than ever before. And that's a big responsibility for you, as well as an enormous opportunity. Pretty soon, I'll be going to my 45th college reunion and then my 50th high school reunion, at which point I suppose we will all be officially declared old. And I've made every high school reunion every 5 years since I finished high school. When I go home to Arkansas, I still have dinner with my best friend from grade school, with the girl I took to the senior party and her husband, who are great friends of mine, with a woman I lived across the street from in grade school who was in my first cabinet. We play games, talk about our kids, their grandkids, and the ones I hope to have. It's important. But at all these reunions, I just sort of look and marvel at the lives that my classmates had. And I can tell you this: the ones that are happiest are not the ones who lived a failure-free life. The ones that are happiest are ones who just kept getting off the mat and pursuing their dreams and going on and making the right decisions in their mind and in their heart about what they would do with what life gave them. The ones that are saddest are not those who failed, they're those who didn't try. You got the power to try with this degree. And you have the responsibility to use it. The other thing I want to say a little bit about briefly is this. You have to decide what you want the world to look like when your children are in your seats. Because none of us exists alone. One of the shrewdest politicians I ever met, who used to be chairman of the Democratic Party, is the now still alive and kicking at 93, legendary Texan Bob Strauss. And Bob Strauss once said that every person who ever runs for office in America tries to convince you that he or she was born in a log cabin they built themselves. And then he'd always smile and he said, "It ain't so." You got a lot of people to thank today, don't you? You have family members that stuck by you, and friends, and maybe somebody helped you finance your education. You got these teachers and administration and the staff. You live in a world that is growing ever more interdependent. It's the most globally interdependent age in history, not because of trade, but because of information technology. And look at all the people that President Whitson cited who came to this class from all over the world. It's an amazingly interdependent world. We know what's going on. I could follow on CNN my Secretary of State's travails in China as she tried to negotiate freedom for the human rights lawyer and his family. Whether we like it or not, our futures are bound up together. And in a world like that, you're a part of a lot of communities. So you don't just get to burrow through life on your own track. You also have to think about, what do you want the future to be like for your family, for the community you live in, for the state, for the country you live in, and for the world? What would you like it to be that when your kids are here? I know what I think. Since we're living in an interdependent world, all it really means is that we're stuck with each other. Divorce is not an option. No matter how many walls you build, they'll still look like nets, partly because of the net. And it's happened, poof, like this. I became president 19 years ago. You know how many sites there were on the World Wide Web? 50. More than that have been added since I started talking. You know how much a cell phone weighed when I took the oath of office? The average cell phone? 5 pounds. Now they're so small that guys with big hands can barely use them. It's happened. I want that world that we're condemned to share to be a world of shared opportunities and shared responsibilities. A world with a deep sense of community across our different cultures and creeds and races. A world where we have a profound sense of opportunity to the future that includes saving the planet for our children and grandchildren. Think of all the stuff we're taking for granted today. Just look around. You'd be shocked if the lights failed, if the microphone went out. God forbid if the air conditioning failed and my hot air really did make you uncomfortable. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can excuse yourself and go get a drink of water, and you're not worried about drinking the water. I spend a lot of my life in places where people can't take any of that for granted. I went to visit one of my farm projects in Malawi 2 years ago. It took me an hour and a half to go 11 miles. Farmers have to give up half their income every year where we don't work. We took care of it. Half their income just to get their food from their produce, what they produce their crops from their farm to the market, because nobody's got a car and the roads stink, and they know the people that do it, they got them over a barrel. So all these farmers are going to have to live in poverty forever, even though they're perfectly good farmers. So we went out there to take their crops to market for them, among other things. But the point I'm trying to make is we take all this stuff for granted. In poor places, you have to build up structures of opportunity that got you into these seats today. A lot of you overcame a lot of obstacles, but like old Bob Strauss said, we didn't build a log cabin ourselves. Now, in wealthy places like America or Europe or Japan, what we have to do is to reform our systems, make education better and more inclusive and more affordable, right? Convince more young women to go into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics so we can create 3 million more jobs that are there. We just can't fill them right now. We got to do the same thing in healthcare. We can't keep spending $1 trillion more on healthcare than we would spend if we had any other country's health system. We got a lot of work to do. We got to modernize this economy. We got to deal with the long-term debt of America. And it's hard to do all of it because rich countries have a different problem. We have systems, they work, that's how we got rich, that's how you're sitting there. But once you do that for a long time, then the systems tend to get rigid. And people become more interested in holding on to present gains than creating a brighter future for their kids. More interested in holding on to their position than advancing the purpose for which the government or a business or a college was set up in the first place. It's happened since the dawn of time. But the end is still the same. You're trying to create a future that we can share, that you can leave to your kids. Your president, Caroline Whitson, and my wife are poster children for what happened to women in the last half of the 20th century. Barack Obama is the poster child for what happened to the civil rights movement in the last half of the 20th century. Right? And I read a book the other day thinking about all the political gridlock in Washington, where this guy said, you know, America's made a lot of progress. We're not as anti-woman as we used to be. We're less racist than we used to be. We're less homophobic than we used to be. We don't discriminate against people who have different religions than we do. We just don't want to be around anybody that disagrees with us. It's our last remaining bigotry. And that's the last point I want to make. At a time when we celebrate the life of the mind, we forget that how we do things are sometimes as important as what we do. And if this university degree hadn't taught you anything, it should have taught you that you don't yet know everything. You're all going to get a Bible here, including those of you who aren't Christians. And whether you are or not, I urge you to open it when you get home and read one chapter you have heard every time you went to a wedding. It's pretty there, but it doesn't belong. In St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians about love. It's really about love for our fellow human beings and why having a charitable feeling toward other people, no matter how different they are than you, is the most important virtue according to this letter. More important than faith and hope is love. Why? Because he says, in this life, as long as we're on this earth, we will see through a glass darkly, and we will know only in part. And whenever we think that we know it all, we are on the road to ruin. Which means we can't be right all the time, and they, no matter who they are, They can't be wrong all the time. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. And every one of us is condemned to spend our entire life in that netherworld where we're going to be right almost every day, more than twice. And we're never going to be right all the time. That's why what is working today is creative cooperation. And that's why in America, when our politics only works through conflict, which is different from disagreement, that's healthy, we're getting in trouble. I could take you, I just got back from Silicon Valley. And I had talking about the work of my foundation, trying to drum up some support. You can't tell there's a recession there. There's no housing crisis. There's an unemployment problem. It's too low. They can't find enough people to fill their jobs. Orlando, not very far from here, has 100 computer simulation companies. Did you know that? Orlando. It's the computer simulation capital of the world. Why? Because NASA and the Defense Department spend $5 billion training people on simulators to drive tanks, fly jets, and put spaceships up. It's cheaper and safer than letting people start on the real thing. But they get a lot of money from Disney World and the Universal theme park because it's more exciting to take your kids there if they have good computer simulation. And the video game division of Global Entertainment Arts there, because if, like me, you occasionally get hooked on one, you know that in order to maintain that constant state of anxiety-driven attention deficit disorder that video games induce, you need good computer simulation. University of Central Florida now has 53,000 students. They change the curriculum every semester to keep feeding the beast. The faculty members earn money for the school by coming up with commercially viable ideas and licensing them there. And they're all working together. Government, the private sector, they work on problems. Republicans, Democrats, private foundations. Creative cooperation works. We live in a world where we have to solve these problems together. And there's something for everybody to do. So it begins by recognizing the importance of personal freedom, personal potential, but cooperation for you to get where you want to go. And I hope every one of you will find a way to do that. Last thing I want to say is this. One of the places I work in Africa, where nobody's got a car, and everybody walks everywhere. When people meet each other walking on these mountain paths and they say, "Good morning, how are you?" in their native languages, the preferred answer is not, "I'm fine, how are you?" which is what we'd say, right? What they say is, in English, "I see you." You think about it. How many people on this exciting day for you did you pass that you didn't see? Who's going to clean this place when you leave? These people played their music and they're sitting there right in front of you. Did you really give them a good look at them? We live life oblivious to the fact that people are swarming around us all the time with their own dreams, their own hopes, their own fears, their own problems. And we need them so that when our kids are sitting here, or our grandkids are sitting here, the world will have more shared prosperity, more shared opportunities, less conflict, and brighter tomorrows. And every one of you has the power to do something about it. Thank you.